A girl came to the hospital to give birth. But at the moment of delivery, the doctor discovered something horrifying. The on-duty doctor had never felt as angry as he did that day upon seeing a woman enter the hospital. In the delivery room, a young American woman named Eleanor Walker, who was about to give birth to a little girl, shocked everyone present. Her expression left everyone speechless. Just when she was about to deliver, it seemed that wasn't enough. Next to her was the man responsible for her pregnancy, a 25-year-old man named Edward Jones. What was supposed to be a calm situation turned chaotic when a little girl, whose belly was severely swollen due to her condition, walked in from the emergency room, holding the hand of a much older man. Due to her discomfort, the girl's face showed signs of distress. Although the nurses were angry, they quickly provided her with a wheelchair and asked her to sit down. Feel a bit more comfortable, and we'll take you to the examination room for the on-duty doctor to check you. Tell me what's wrong with your sister, the on-duty doctor asked. The girl was stunned and unable to speak. She was 9 months pregnant and about to deliver, and the on-duty doctor didn't even have time for self-introduction, even though he was not interested in knowing who the man accompanying the girl was. The little girl was also unable to speak due to the discomfort she felt in her body, so she was immediately taken to the delivery room. Upon seeing the unusual pair, the people in the hospital felt outraged by the situation. They knew the girl was showing signs of being in labor and looked very young. She can't be more than 160 centimeters tall. Her face is delicate and immaculate. She must be around 10 or 12 years old, commented a woman who was in the same condition but with fewer months of gestation. Seeing who accompanied the girl, a man taller than the minor with a very full beard, the witnesses of the unusual moment couldn't believe that a man of his age was with the girl. What happened to that man? How is it possible that he's with this little one giving birth? Did he do something bad to her? Whispered one of the people in the waiting room. We need to be careful, he might be a pervert. He should be locked up for what he did to the girl. This is very frowned upon in society, whispered a man to his wife, who stared with her mouth open at what was happening in the maternity room. Some of the women in the delivery room, holding their daughters' hands more tightly, and others simply canceled their appointments at the hospital, leaving the facility scared for their own children. But if he's the father of the child, he's definitely a degenerate. He shouldn't even have been here. He should be exposed, said one of the nurses quietly to her colleague, who was still in shock. The worst part is that, given the delicacy of the situation, I have to go into surgery with that poor innocent. It's outrageous. The doctor is also very outraged and supports calling the authorities, said the head nurse indignantly. The nurses came and went, still in disbelief. They were leaving the operating room, trying not to notice the pervert waiting for news about the little girl being treated inside. They watched as the man raised his face, hoping to get information about what was happening inside. However, the health professionals were not pleased with the situation. They suspected something was wrong. They decided the best course of action was to ignore the man. It was irresponsible on his part. That little girl was only 10 years old. What happened to her? One nurse asked another, glancing disapprovingly at Edward Jones. The calmness of the waiting room was only interrupted by the countless whispers of those present, in addition to the ticking of the clock. As time passed, every time a new person arrived, a strong tension was felt among the attendees. When asked about the situation, one of the people present would comment that the man standing there had come with a little girl no older than 10 to have his child. Can you believe that? Indignation and reproach filled the room. And the discomfort of the people was palpable to everyone who arrived. Edward Jones just stood somewhere in the waiting room, listening patiently and unmoved by the malicious comments from those around him. He knew he shouldn't have been there, but he didn't regret his decision to ignore the whispers around him. He only needed to think about her health. He didn't want to sit down, feeling a bad premonition. A woman couldn't stand it. The man's rudeness made her feel she could not remain silent about the situation. Summoning her courage, she confronted the elderly man who had brought the girl. She felt no remorse for her actions, she was simply doing what she believed was right. "You're a pervert," she said. "Why aren't the girl's parents with her? You shouldn't be able to get away with what you've done." The girl's daughter screamed in the waiting area, prompting her to suggest that they should postpone the appointment to another day. "Mom, this is not suitable for you. Just leave." Returning home with the elderly woman, she saw that the man was still standing there, seemingly indifferent to what the other elderly woman had done. Filled with determination and anger, she called the authorities to report the incident. A lady who had witnessed the situation in the medical facility stood up from her seat, exited through the lounge door to avoid being heard by the man. "I don't want him to know his intentions might be discovered, in case he tries to escape." "Good morning. I'd like to report abuse of a minor." "The best thing you can do is send some agents to the hospital to keep it discreet." "Ma'am, are you sure?" The law enforcement officer on the other end responded. "What you're describing is serious. We can only send a legal committee to investigate the case, there's no other way." At this moment, a girl was giving birth in the hospital operating room. And she was not joking about such a sensitive topic. The person responsible was still waiting there. "Now is the best time to investigate this situation," the officer replied, very indignant. "We've sent a team. Don't worry. We'll investigate the case. Make sure he doesn't move from his place," the officer said before ending the call. The woman, satisfied with having reported the pervert, sought out the nurses' station to inform them of what had happened, asking for their assistance to ensure he wouldn't leave the waiting room. The man was the least of their concerns. He knew very well he was responsible for Eleanor and that he would stay there without moving until he knew she was okay. Both the mother and the child were under his responsibility, and he was prepared to endure all the consequences of this tough situation. To avoid hearing the insults from those present at the hospital, he moved to a corner to try to remain unnoticed. He truly did not want to disturb the people in the health facility. But it was very difficult because, as time passed, the voices of the attendees grew louder. "Why didn't you leave her alone before doing that damage? You have to answer to the law for what you did." "You pervert," said another woman, outraged by the situation. As the hours went by, those in the waiting room could no longer contain their hurtful comments directed at the man. The old man clearly abused the girl until she ended up in this state. "You're the child's father," a young woman commented, unable to understand how they had gotten into such a delicate situation. However, Edward Jones still did not answer the questions posed. To those around him, the best thing he did at that moment was to walk around to calm the situation. He left the place to find coffee and something to eat, appearing quite timid. A woman sitting at the waiting room entrance remarked that he must pay for what he had done, making the innocent girl go through all this. He couldn't remain so calm. But the earlier whispers had started to spread little by little. There were few stronger complaints about the girl's condition at the hospital. "You should repent for what you've done, you have no conscience," said an elderly woman waiting for her daughter, who was also about to give birth at the hospital. In the health center. "You must ask God to forgive the evil deeds of others so you can be saved," the elderly woman continued. The man's reaction was to stand in a distant, somewhat dark corner, where the crowd could not see his evil traits. Since he arrived, he had not spoken a word. It seemed he regretted nothing. "You must wait for the security personnel to see if they are ready to answer your questions. Son, you're not responsible. But you brought the pregnant girl to the hospital," an elderly man told him. A woman waiting to visit a hospitalized relative replied. If he had a conscience, he wouldn't have done this. She couldn't leave until they finally caught him, as she could no longer tolerate the situation. She felt somewhat innocent, under the pressure of people harshly criticizing him. Edward Jones responded with a deep and stern voice. "You should not interfere in other people's lives. Live and let live. What I did with the little girl is none of your business." After that comment, the man fell silent, only watching the door through which Eleanor had entered, accompanied by medical professionals. On the other side of the room, specifically in the delivery room, the doctor on duty was scrubbing his hands vigorously, driven by the indignation coursing through his body. Beside him was one of his colleagues who would assist him in the procedure. "She's a minor. How is it possible for a minor? Her body is so tiny. She must be around 10 years old. What a perverted mind does this," the doctor commented angrily. He had 2 daughters close in age to the little girl who was complaining of discomfort on the operating table. "In all my years of practicing, I've never attended a case like this. This is truly unprecedented. I hope the authorities have already been notified," he told his team. "Yes, doctor." A woman, upset by the situation, called the authorities to investigate what happened to the little girl, replied the anesthesiologist. The doctor on duty, filled with resolve, vowed to do everything possible to save both the mother and the baby. Complications during childbirth are common in such cases. Steeling himself, he entered the delivery room to begin his work. Still enraged by how the little girl could have ended up in such a situation. "I will do everything in my power to ensure you're okay," he said to the girl before she fell asleep from the anesthesia. As the anesthesia began to take effect for the operation, the on-duty doctor started to notice something very unusual in the girl's organs. What he was seeing was astonishing. He remarked, puzzled, to his team. "Are you seeing what I'm seeing? This is incredible. These organs do not belong to a 10 or 12 years old girl. They are as developed as those of an adult woman," he said, astonished by the strange case before him. "The mother looks like a minor on the outside, but on the inside, her organs are like those of an older woman, practically the same age, when the man we believe is the father of the child. We need to get to the bottom of this case. How is this possible? Have you ever seen anything like this? This situation needs to be investigated," the doctor said, still surprised by what he was observing in his patient. None of the professionals in the operating room could explain the situation they faced. They decided to wait until Eleanor was awake to ask her how it was possible for a girl of her age to have such developed organs. Indeed, colleagues, this case requires a thorough study, the on-duty doctor commented. After completing the procedure, while the doctors in the operating room were baffled. A team of law enforcement agents entered the waiting room to begin their investigation into Edward Jones. Is this the man who brought the 10-year-old pregnant girl to have her baby? I imagine he will have to pay for this, commented an elderly woman who couldn't believe what was happening. Ma'am. Don't make assumptions until we complete the necessary investigations. This man is considered innocent until proven otherwise, said one of the officers. Innocent? How can that be? Don't you see he brought her himself? We saw with our own eyes that she is a minor. He should be interrogated and taken away for what he did, commented a woman. After this remark, the waiting room, which was filled with people, erupted into shouts demanding that he be taken away and locked up. He must pay, she is just a 10-year-old child. Not innocent, the crowd exclaimed. The man could only lower his head in shame, overwhelmed by the situation. After the incident, the people who had insulted Edward Jones did not expect the ensuing commotion. They were angry and distressed, demanding that the person who harmed the girl be locked up. Several doctors interrupted their consultations, trying to calm themselves down. Law enforcement took the man to a secluded room. He only wanted to know if Eleanor and her baby were healthy. Although uniformed police began to interrogate him, he simply said, "Wait. The only thing that matters is that Eleanor and her baby recover." After several hours of labor, the on-duty doctor found Edward Jones and shared the good news: the girl's baby was a boy. After multiple examinations, the young mother understood what had happened and fundamentally changed her attitude toward her father. She then entered the office where security personnel were interrogating him. The baby was born at 8 p.m. Weighing 3,900 grams and measuring 35 centimeters, he was a very healthy boy. Tonight, we will keep this mother and child under observation, the doctor told the new father. The health experts informed the security personnel that no crime had been committed, so they had to release Edward Jones so he could reunite with the child. People were astonished to see the health experts pat the new father on the back, unable to believe that the doctors had accepted the situation. The little girl ended up in that state, leading to protests at the operating room doors. That man should be locked up. He shouldn't be given any pats on the back as if congratulating him for a great achievement, commented an indignant elderly woman. Has he lost his mind? Doctor, asked one of the nurses. You were very upset about the situation of the underage girl. How did the health professional who had been in his profession for several years change his mind so quickly? He couldn't believe what his eyes were seeing when he attended the delivery of the little mother. His attitude changed when he was able to speak calmly with the child's mother. Unlike his arrival at the hospital when they hadn't had the chance to have a coherent conversation due to the severe discomfort Eleanor felt from the imminent birth of her child. Eleanor Walker is not a 10 or 12 years old girl, she is a 25 years old adult woman due to a rare illness that wreaked havoc on her pituitary gland, which produces growth hormone. As a result, Eleanor does not age, so her exterior looks like a minor of 10 or 12 years old. Dr. Edward Jones is my legal husband. When we fell in love, I knew what could happen in a moment like this. That's why he ignores the wicked comments that people who don't know the situation might make, commented Eleanor Walker, asking to be allowed to see her life partner when the new mother recovers from the surgery she underwent. She meets with Edward Jones to introduce him to their son, Jonathan Jones, who, after undergoing all the necessary examinations, is a healthy child. After the explanation from the doctor who performed the surgery on the mother, The couple went to the waiting room to explain to everyone who had criticized the man the situation that brought them there. Eleanor explained that when she was about 10 years old, she suffered from a terrible illness that severely damaged her pituitary gland. So she does not age. Her parents, after learning that she would not age and that her entire life would seem like she was a child, supported all her decisions. Several years ago, when she entered university, she met Edward Jones, who mistook her for the younger sister of one of her best friends. Eleanor recounts with a small smile on her lips. He couldn't believe her age due to her appearance. But he was the only one who understood what she was going through because of her appearance. Over time, love grew between them. She continued explaining, holding her partner's hand. The couple ignored all the prejudices of people who saw them walking hand in hand or showing their mutual affection. They learned not to listen to the malicious whispers, which explains the man's attitude in the waiting room. While all the visitors criticized their situation, the elderly woman who had harshly reproached him approached the couple to congratulate them and apologize for drawing erroneous conclusions based on appearances. I am truly sorry for having criticized the new father so harshly. Congratulations on the new member of your family. I wish you all the best in the world, she said, leaving the place blushing with embarrassment. After the elderly woman, others who had whispered hurtful comments to the unusual couple also began to offer their apologies. We must be aware that at first glance, one always thinks the worst. But from now on, I will wait to know the whole story before making false conclusions, commented the head nurse who was on duty that day. A few hours after Jonathan Jones came into the world, the couple's relatives arrived to meet the new family member. They were very happy that the little boy was healthy and would not suffer from the hormonal imbalance that his mother, Eleanor, had. Eleanor and Edward thanked everyone for their understanding. We know it's very confusing to see me with my husband. This has happened to us throughout our married life. But we've learned to live our lives ignoring external opinions, Eleanor commented to the people who lowered their eyes to the ground, embarrassed by all the harsh comments. However, very close by was a journalist who made the news go viral on all social media. When the family left the hospital, they had to give a large number of interviews so that their true story would be known across the country. They hoped to put an end to prejudices, thinking that Eleanor was a minor married to a much older man. If we do the math, I am 2 months older than my husband and the father of my child, Eleanor commented with a mischievous smile on her lips. After their incredible and wonderful story was publicized, the couple returned happily and peacefully to a small town in the United States. The townspeople, who knew the story of Edward, Eleanor, and their little Jonathan, lived a full life in a home where the inhabitants were happy. After watching the story above, do you have any thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. If you enjoyed our video, please like, subscribe, and share our channel. That's all about today's stories. See you next time.